how do you kind of cultivate cross cross topic curiosity?
Yeah, that's a big mama question. So if let me just give the caveat. If we knew the answer to that question, schools would be better and humans would be smarter all over the world.
Yes. Yeah.
With that said, I think we can go back to something we were talking about earlier is one of the strategies, especially I'm thinking with children, but everything I talk about with children is relevant to adults in the leadership world, is sometimes we forget that curiosity is an inefficiency in the system. For you to get
Right.
people curious about something you're about to talk about, you need to convince them that this is a value add for them to be engaged in you over their smartphone and the people next to them who they probably chose to sit next to. Now,
Right.
so I put the onus on the person who's in the front of the room as opposed to like you have to beat the smartphone. You have to beat the people they chose to sit next to. If you don't do that as a comedian, as a, as a playwright, as a musician, that's on you. And when you're a teacher, I think one of the mistakes that people make is they don't say the reason that we're going to be talking about the Black Plague is it is so relevant to how does an epidemic affect people to become risk averse in a society, which then leads to less innovation, less creativity, and slows down evolution. If you set that up that way and you introduce very specific things that people created that are relevant to the audience that's in front of you, you're going to get them interested in a topic where they might have no interest in history previously.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And but you can't customize school infinitely, right? There's only a certain amount that you can kind of um, personalize it. What's the right amount there?
Ah, man, you're good. That should be on your podcast once a week. So let me tell you what I bemoan. So I have three daughters. Two are twin 18-year-olds about to graduate high school. One's in seventh grade right now. One of the things that's annoyed me watching them come into the classroom as their mystery speaker, mystery reader over the years is how many teachers often use sports as an analogy to try to win over the boys in the class. And the
Mhm.
assumption is if you're XY, you're going to be interested in sports. And then it's like as if 100% of boys are interested in sports and there are no other hobbies, no other interests that exist. And the
Right.
other part is how little effort as a dad of three daughters is made to figure out what's the metaphor and examples I'm going to use to try and win over the girls in the class. And
Yep.
so to your point, you can't use three examples every time you introduce a mathematical equation in a math class, but you can intentionally switch off and you can give meta comments and say, okay, because I just gave an example about the New York Yankees to explain the last this one, now I'm going to give you an example of to talk about why this math is important to understanding why Pluto is no longer a planet. So you're switching and you're giving a meta comment in terms of, okay, now that I just gave an astronomy example and a sport example, raise your hand. What's the next category I should play? Let's think like Jeopardy right now, and have the class like interact and just come up with topics, right? Like 17th century, cannibalism, whatever they want to do. And like, if you get a classroom that gets to pick the topic for the examples and the metaphors, you're going to get so much enthusiasm in that classroom. And it's such a low effort way to win over like a really difficult audience.
Yeah, because they want to learn it because they're invested now. They've helped create this idea in their head, as opposed to it just being shoved down their throats.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And
yeah.
you don't have, and if you're an English class teacher, listen, I'm sure Jackson, you're just like me. I would love if every kid read Lord of the Flies, 1984, Fahrenheit 451. Like, these are
Right.
classics. But it's okay if you love graphic comic books. It's okay if you want to use Harry Potter, which I've never even read before. If you're going to just want to get kids to read and understand that they are levels, levels of the game in terms of like what's underneath the text that comes in there, go to where they're excited and intrigued. Don't go where you're excited and intrigued.
Right. Yeah. Um, yeah, and it makes sense that the teachers are trying to customize the class and they lean more towards the guys because boys are generally less interested in school at a young age, and kind of until later in high school don't really care. And the girls are just generally more like, okay, this is the thing we're doing, and we will be good at it. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, interesting. So, um, when you're trying to customize or personalize these questions and these ideas to find out where these kids are interested, um, the ultimate goal is to get them to a point of higher education, and you don't want to have it um, infinitely customized, right? You want the end goal is, let's say they're reading The Lord of the Rings, and if they're just reading graphic novels along the way, which, if you're a young kid, you maybe shouldn't be reading the graphic novels, but if they're just doing that along the way, there's a point at which you kind of need to level them up. How do you know what is the point when it's time for them to uh, get outside their comfort zone?
Well, the entire journey, the entire educational journey, the entire workplace journey, the entire relationship journey should be all about developing distress tolerance, psychological distress, physical distress, emotional distress. I mean, one of the challenges right now is people are experiencing more mental health difficulties than any prior generation.
Right.
Part of that is because there's less stigma, so people are comfortable talking about it, but that doesn't account for all the changes that have happened there. And one of the
Yep.
things that we need to do is allow people to fail at things and then scaffold them. And I mean, too much of the conversation is about developing a growth mindset, getting people to realize like they have the capacity to grow beyond whatever profile they bring into the classroom, the workplace, like the athletic field. Like you
Yeah.
can grow, and part of it is a perception. So, but that's not enough. Part of that is like if somebody fails at something, what is the exact things you're going to do with them to remind them that they're high potential individuals? So there's great research showing that if you have teachers, now this is done in high school and college, and after there's a bad performance on a paper, like a written paper, and some people write like, "Listen, you tried your best, great job." Typical teacher leader feedback. But
Right.
other people write down the add-on addition, which is that I know you can do better because I've seen you in class, I've heard you in class. That
Right.
little bit about that self-affirmation that I saw your potential does wonders. It actually, when teachers add that onto papers, you find that there's this I'm sure you've seen it before. There's like this black white achievement gap, and it's
Hmm.
slowly reducing. It used to be about 15 IQ points. Now it's down to
Yeah.
about 12 IQ points. But it also
Yep.
happens it's in classroom grades also. There's a gap. Like doesn't
Right.
matter what you want to see, the data
Yeah.
are there. It's pretty clear. When you add on this, I see your potential little feedback handwritten on people's papers, it wipes out the black white achievement gap in that classroom.
Hmm.
That is
Interesting.
cool. That is a cool intervention.
Yeah. Yeah, and um it's beneficial for the kids themselves and for uh society at large, right? You don't want people they go to school, they're not really like they feel like they can't win at that, and so they turn to the easy thing at that point, which is crime and violence. So that encouragement to like you have the capability to make it, you just need to do these things different, is like there's a way out for kids because it can kind of be hopeless for a young kid to like, "Oh, I failed this, that's because I'm a failure, that's because like there's just an infinite spiral because they're a kid, right?" um, and so that it's just ever leading downward. um,
And think about how inexpensive this very wise psychological intervention is.
right.
All it means is that you don't have an auditorium of a racially diverse set of kids and say, listen, you all have great potential. Any of you could end up becoming Secretary of State, a vice president. Because actually, I've I despise comments like that because based on what we know of what colleges prior presidents and prior secretaries of states went to, most people don't have a chance. So
Hmm.
that's not what you do. You provide the very specific moment where you see potential but they didn't live up to it. And you remind them that you see that potential. The more specific you can be about what you saw, I do this all the time in my college class. I get these students, it's often guys in my class where, in class, in comments in class, their questions, they're like little Jacksons. Like they're just asking these really great questions. They stump me. And anytime I have to say, you know what? I have no idea. I'll come back to the next class with the answer. And then they do bad on exams. They do bad on papers. And I'll come up to them after class. I'm like, listen, Mike, your comments in class, I know how amazing I know how well you know the psychology. Something's not transferring to the page, but I see you can do this. I want you to experiment with a different style, and I might give them one or two tips about this. But the person in class is the person, when they write that paper, that same person, that same Michael writes that paper, it's going to be an A paper. And they glow. And the thing is, I'm not disingenuous. I'm saying, like, I've seen you. I know how intelligent you are. Something's happening between your brain and getting it on the written page where there's a loss of information. I want you to find that information and put it on there. Record yourself talking, then write it down. A very typical strategy that I give people. But when you personalize like that, it is a small cost to me. It's inefficient in terms of my time. If I had to do that with 20 students after every class. But to me, what's a better use of my time as a professor and a
Right.
teacher?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the
No, that's
job.
it.